tell me what to do, give me a word list. And that kind of defeats the purpose of being curious about words. So there isn't one. And honestly, you don't want one. We want to be able to build a skill set where it doesn't matter what the word is, that we can ask ourselves, how is this word being built? How do we know? Let's go off and see if we can prove or disprove what we think it might be. Now, I get that that is a very nebulous response for people who are linear and need a plan. So I'm not totally heartless, but ultimately there will never be a word list. Okay. But this is our aim. So when we are approaching word study or morphology in our classrooms, we want to be curious all the time. We are not going to be dismissing certain things as nonsensical or odd or weird. It's interesting. We want to learn more. I'm not sure why that is. Let's see if we can figure it out. I'm not sure why that is, and I don't know how to figure that out. So we're going to write this on the board over here in our curious space. And at some point, we're going to come back to it. We're also not in a rush to do this work. Then, in this space of curiosity, there are two things that are happening side by side. One of the things is exploring word families and studying individual bases or words and the words that are related to them. Okay, that's happening in one bubble of time. Additionally, at other times, it's going to make a lot of sense to zoom in to a particular affix or really highlight a particular spelling convention or suffixing convention. All of that is okay. The deal or the roadblock that we are finding is that a lot of commercially available resources, published resources, only do the thing on the right. We're going to learn about affixes and we're going to memorize or practice certain spelling, and I'll guarantee you they call them rules. That's when my eye starts to twitch. They're not rules. They're guidelines. They're conventions. We don't want to just do that because morphology is bigger than that. And it's through the exploration of word families that we start to see connections, like that quote that I shared from Mary Beth earlier, through words that maybe we didn't think about before. And as soon as we can kind of unlock that as a space of curiosity, now we're running. So no, there's no word list. This is our aim. This is our goal. Okay. So what is the process? What is the plan then if there's no list? Well, here's where we start. We start with free bases, which are you recognize them as a word. You'll see them listed underneath there, okay? And words that have no suffixing changes, no suffixing conventions. And the reason we start in this space is because it's simply about identifying the pieces or the morphemes that are coming together to build the words in the word family. So alongside the recording link that I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to share with you a Google Doc. And that Google Doc has about 10 different free bases at the top of each page. Okay. Like this. If you want to do an activity with your students, you take the paper, you fold them up hamburger style. On the top, you get them to brainstorm all the words they think are part of this family. All the words that you think are related in some way. We're going to add all the suffixes that we can think to add, all the prefixes that we can think to add to the base. Then they unfold it. And on the bottom, they start writing word sums to show the parts that are going into making each of those words that they've listed up here. Okay. It only counts as a word up here if they can actually use it as a sentence, because inevitably kids will just be slapping prefixes and suffixes on the base and hoping they're on the right track. So they need to know what the word is and use it contextually in order for it to be part of the list. Okay. This allows students to tap into the background knowledge that they already carry around word families as part of their oral language development. They have this, they use it all the time in conversation. Now, those of you that are working with English as additional language learners, we do have a little bit of a roadblock here, simply because they may not have that oral language vocabulary. And this is where we include images or visuals as much as possible. We can anchor it with the word or the base written in their home language so they can know or make a connection to what it is we're talking about. And if that's an area of interest of scaffolding some stuff for our English as additional language learners, then by all means, let us know and I'll be able to provide you with some resources around that. Then we move to free bases that experience some sort of a suffixing change. And this doesn't mean that I'm actually just going to teach them this list of words on this slide. It means that I might show them a series of words where when I add an ing ending, there is a change. And when I add an ing ending, there isn't a change. And having them sort between when there's a change and there isn't a change. And why do they think that is? And can you find any words where you think it should be following this convention, but it doesn't follow the convention? Little side note there, if you do come across words that don't follow a suffixing convention as you think it should, there's always a reason. And usually the reason has to do with if it was followed as a suffixing convention, there would be confusion in the meaning of the word by the time you added that on. And so when there isn't a change, there's always a reason. And the reason is not just to make spelling hard. It's so that there is clearer comprehension while we read written text. Remember, because spelling's all about meaning in written text, first and foremost. Once we've managed free base words and they're really like on a roll, then we introduce this idea of bound bases. Bases that hold meaning, but we only recognize as a word once it's been suffixed or affixed, I should say. And so here's some examples of bound bases. So if you look at the second one here, IT is the base. It means to go. EX means to, like, as in out. And so an exit is where you go out, where you leave the room. On this note, the word transit is also in this word family. So trans meaning across, and IT meaning go, transit, go across. And so now, if you didn't know up until about 30 seconds ago that exit was actually an example of a bound base with a prefix attached to it, don't panic. There is nothing wrong with exploring a word that you think is a free base word and talking about what words might be in the word family, and then fast forward however long, realizing that it isn't. There's a bound base in there. And all it does is open up more words for you to explore. Lana and I learned that last year when we did Morphology Mondays, more times than I could shake a stick at. So this isn't, you will not create irreparable damage by exploring a bound base word as if it was as a free base. That's okay. We just have to be willing to go back and revisit our thinking once we've learned more information. Once you've looked at a bound base with, that adds like one affix, now we're going to look at bound bases that build out morphologically complex words. So maybe there is one or two prefixes. Maybe there are two or three suffixes, which is why we don't say prefixes go at the beginning and suffixes go at the end. We say prefixes go to the left of the base and suffixes go to the right. Because if there is no prefix and we have the base, and then we add 3 suffixes on it, now all of a sudden the base is the beginning and the end is a suffix, but the stuff in the middle, what's that even? Okay, so just this is where we can be mindful about our language in order to make it clearer for students. So the next layer of this, so once you've had a chance to like process this continuum, the next layer is, what am I expected to do in this grade? Now, those of you that are in 5 or 6, 4, 5, 6, your kiddos might not be ready to talk about some of the concepts in the curriculum as listed. So you're going to go back in the grades to find out where they're at. And that's where you're going to start, because that's what they're ready to start with. Of course, you will get a copy of this slide deck, and that link there will take you to our little continuum that we've built out of all the concepts of morphology in the curriculum across the grades, and it'll give you a really good sense of where to begin if you're wondering. Okay, so we're going to keep that in mind as well. So here's an example of what this could look like in grade 2. So grade 2 has both ER and EST as comparative suffixes. Okay, we're comparing things when we're using these suffixes. Little side note, that's not the only job of the ER suffix. So in conversation with your kiddos, we are not going to say that ER is used always to compare. It's not used always to compare. And so we have to make sure that they understand that ER can have more than one job. So then we ask ourselves, what word families can I explore to help students understand and recognize these suffixes? So here's some examples of some free base words that can take on ER and EST that have no suffixing changes when we do that. Sorry, my mouse is very sensitive. Over here, we see some, now, some of you know that happy is not a free base word. I know that, you know that, but does it matter in grade 2 that it is not a free base word? No, it does not. So we're going to look at happy in grade 2 as if it's a free base word. And we're going to ask our students, you know, if BIG plus ER is rewritten as, what is it? Why do we make the changes, et cetera, et cetera. We're also going to have a conversation about what other words are in the word family. Now, some of these have teeny tiny families. Like there's only 2 or 3 words that would be in that family. Others have many. So when we look at the word funny, we know the base is actually fun, F-U-N. And so what other words can be made with F-U-N as a base? And we're going to brainstorm those. We're going to use them in sentences. We're going to talk about how they're built. The next question that we're going to ask ourselves as we're doing this planning and thinking is, what texts can I use to introduce these words? Because we want to ground our understanding in text. A text can be a poem. A text can be a picture book. It can be a song. It can be a meme, for crying out loud. Just something that we're attaching meaning to in order to help build a sense of language and words and context. So here are 3 books that you could use as a read aloud. Read the book first for fun, to enjoy it, because seriously, that's why books are made. And then secondly, we're going to go back and then we're going to focus in on words that are using ER and EST. How are they built? What other words are in the family? On and on. P.S. This is not one lesson. This is a conversation that takes place over many days and times. Okay. So we don't save our morphology till like May and do 15 lessons in a row and then call it a day. We really want to have these conversations over time to really highlight some of this work. The other place that you can go where it is an amazing resource is called Engage with the Page. And when you get the slide deck, these are all hyperlinked. So you can just click here and it'll take you to the website. Now, the only downfall is that you can't search by Like say I'm looking for the EST suffix. I can't search by the EST suffix. That's not how the site is built. It's a collection of picture books that Fiona Hamilton and her colleagues have put together to say, you could look at this book, read this book, and here are 10 different things or 6 different things that you could do with this book related to morphology. If you have a book buying problem, this website is not your friend. I apologize in advance for the state of your credit card. But check it out when you've got some time to look for books, beautiful, beautiful picture books that you can use to explore morphology with your students. All right, here's your action item as you move forward for the next few weeks. When you're doing your read aloud this week, because I know all of you have a picture book or a novel that you will share with your students sometime, for sure, until we meet again, because that's like 5 weeks away or something. But if you want to condense up the homework, that's fine. So as you're thinking about the books that you read this week, tune into words that are worth exploring. They could be words connected to curriculum pieces like ER and EST in grade 2, or just words that you're curious about. Like, I've never thought about why that word is spelt that way. Why does ptarmigan have a P at the beginning? I don't know. Let's go do some investigating, or let's write it down and investigate it later.